were experiencing water challenges, whether it's a result of maintenance that went on longer than it was supposed to, whatever the reason may have been. The point is that people are having experiences that for them are out of the ordinary.
Absolutely. And I think it's another case of what was happening with state capture, which was about 10 years, and coming back to bite us at a local government level. And I think we all looked at state capture at a national level, with DWS was one of those with Minister Mokanyane. And we forgot to look at what was going on at a local government in terms of the corruption and the state of local municipalities. So that's one aspect. The second aspect that has got us to where we are right now is the deterioration of our infrastructure. Infrastructure has to be maintained annually. You have to set aside a certain amount of your budget, and it's advised from national government that you put aside 6 to 8% of the cost of the asset aside for maintenance. This has not been done for over a decade. So what you're dealing with now is infrastructure that cannot cope. It's old. You have increased in population that they have not planned for or actually managed better. So obviously you have a system that is failing, and that is what we have to deal with. The other thing I need to say, Cathy, when we talk about non-payment as well, I need to make this point very clear, that it's not just residents. And often the municipalities blame residents for not paying. Companies are not paying, small, businesses are not paying, government-owned buildings are not paying. So the issue of non-payment for water is a much bigger issue than just blaming residents and consumers, the smaller usage for the mess we're in right now.
Henk, when we again look at the issue of water services, municipalities often say, well, they don't have a choice but to keep providing water to people, even though they're not servicing their bills, because it's a human right. Clarify that issue for us. What can municipalities do? What can't they do when it comes to the provision of water? What is legislated?
I think we need to start with the provision, the relevant provision in the Constitution, and that is Section 27 of the Constitution, which guarantees guarantees access to water to everyone residing in South Africa. But Section 27 also goes further, and they say that the state must provide it within its available resources. So access to water is a constitutional right, and a municipality must just ensure that water, especially during these times of drought and poor service delivery, is just made available to all residents. But if I may go further, Cathy, the census 2022 indicated that over the last 30 years of democracy, South Africa has taken significant strides in water provision. However, what we have seen over the last decade or so is, and we've seen it in all provinces. We've held service delivery inquiries in many provinces. We will be releasing the service delivery inquiry report in the Free State on the 19th of November. And what we have seen is that there are numerous factors and numerous challenges in all the provinces when it comes to the provision of water. And, the challenges are caused mainly by insufficient attention to water infrastructure. The previous speaker has spoken to it. Insufficient planning. Good governance is just neglected at local level. We have seen unskilled staff, especially in your very, very important municipal departments like your engineering departments, unskilled staff members, vacancies, key vacancies that are not being filled, even senior management positions where your municipal councils make it absolutely impossible for those vacancies to be filled. And this is no secret, but vandalism and sabotage that is taking place, and we know the involvement of your water tanker mafias, your construction mafias in municipalities. That is unfortunately the reality when it comes to water provision. When we met with municipalities, most of them, when we gave them the opportunity to explain themselves, most of them used inadequate funds as an excuse. And yes, I do agree that government needs to reconsider its funding model, especially to municipalities. But we also know that there's serious financial mismanagement taking place at local level. So the solution is not easy. We can advise the residents to approach an appropriate court of law or to lay complaints with the Human Rights Commission, and we can do whatever we can. But we need the involvement of everyone, the involvement of the Department of Water and Sanitation, provincial government, national government, Chapter 9 institutions, civil society. Everyone needs to identify solutions so that we now start with the process of addressing the problems. Thank you, Cathy.
All right, we're going to pause it there with this particular conversation. It's 10:30, time for your latest headlines.
Thanks, Cathy, and a very good morning. With the news headlines this hour, ke Modupi Mohlahlana. Nelson Mandela Bay residents in the Eastern Cape say the non-maintenance of stormwater drains is the reason for flooding in some of the areas there. 8 suspects, including a husband and wife, have been arrested for allegedly running a multi-billion rand diamond investment scam. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa sees Russia as a valued ally who supported the country's struggle against apartheid. And those are your headlines. A full news update, 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand currently trading at 17 rand 55 to the dollar, 22 rand 75 to the pound, and 18 rand 92 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mainly higher at the closing bell, the JSE green across the board in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are mostly also higher this hour. Gold is trading at $2,755, platinum at $1,035 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $75.59 a barrel.
And we went on a water safari, and Mom spotted a hippo, and it said,
There is a place where you can see wonder and the wild, with breathtaking scenery and endless landscapes. Enjoy good food and embrace great taste.
And the next day we went to the reed dance. I saw the maidens handing over reeds to the mighty Zulu king, and the Zulu warriors chanting, Baye!
Explore all this and more in the magical Zulu Kingdom.
This message is brought to you by KZN Tourism and Film Authority.
Get ready, Mzansi! The jaw-dropping 82 million rand estimated lotto jackpot is your chance to take home big millions this Saturday. Don't delay. Play Lotto for an estimated 82 million rand jackpot today for your chance at an unforgettable win. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. eTuba is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
16 teams of Mzansi Africa's Elite League are back to the battlefield. Amanda Masha. They all believe Ukutukusoba right, Kube bright, as they navigate the path to the final. This is the second edition of the Carlin Knockout Cup. Fagukesi. Catch the unmatched passion and drama of Ipola Lasemzansi. The Carlin Knockout Cup live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on Citizens Corner for this Wednesday, and we're focusing on water as a human right, the perspective of those affected by water shortages, but also looking then at solutions and recourse. What is it that citizens can do when in this situation? Welile, let me find out from you, what are the steps that the community has tried to take in responding then to these water shortages? And I think I'm particularly interested in the response of the areas that haven't had water for a longer period of time. So those that you mentioned, have been struggling for close on 10 years with unstable supply.
On the issue of the steps that the community has taken, they even write some letters to the municipal manager's office and try to do some smaller forum to go and negotiate to the municipality, because the issue of water, all of us need to play our role, as much as the municipality must also play their role and the community must also play their role. But the problem is one, there is no communication in the municipality. There's no feedback. We even tried as councillors to put the problem in front. They not even inform councillors in terms of the council meeting how far with the payment of the rainwater issue. Instead, they will just say, no, we are communicating with the rainwater, we are still in talks, but there's no feedback on those issues. What the municipality is doing, we must not forget this thing of restriction of water. Rainwater need to do it, but we must also check that people must not lose water every day. There must be some priority measurement that we need to deliver to the communities. And now what I see is going to create some riots, particularly in Kutso and other areas like Kokos. It will end up becoming a riot thing because people are starting to gather in smaller groups, and after that it's going to be a big problem. I think this thing, I concur with the previous speaker to say it needs an agent interference in terms of the national government and the provincial government, including the local government. And now without those talks with the local government and national, because Mirafong automatically have failed our community. Now we need to take it, the province need to come down and try to solve this problem. Thank you.
Ferial, let me bring you in here and ask, what makes solving water challenges particularly difficult, and what creates a situation where a day without water becomes a week without water, becomes months, years without water?
So, Cathy, that's a very good question, and I think it is a challenge that we're trying to find a way forward. But I think that one of the issues is, I think that there are ways that government should be behaving and that they're not. So let's start with the whole idea of access, because we have two big issues on water in South Africa. The one is the water quantity and the other is water quality. Right? And this particular issue is on water quantity, because it's about not only about how much water we have as a country, but also access. And Henk mentioned that we've done pretty well since 1994, but I think if we unpack that, we might see that we haven't done so well. When you look at what do we mean by access, government has it that, well, presently in South Africa, only 46% of households have a tap in their home. How many of those taps actually have water in it right now? That's another story. But there are 25% of schools that don't have water, 46% of clinics that don't have water, And the way government gets away with this, people going with 10 days, 7 days without water, is they provide these water tanks and they about 200 meters from your household. Now, that whole thing of access, well, you have access, it's a water tank and it's 200 meters from your household. Is that really access? So it becomes really difficult to then challenge government constitutionally to say, you have not provided water, because in the Constitution, well, in the Water Act, you cannot go, anyone cannot go without water for 7 days. It doesn't say 7 consecutive days, it says 7 days. So clearly the Human Rights Commission can do something about that, or challenge the violation of human rights on that. But we're not able to really use those avenues well enough to get where we want to go, because people are angry, and I hear what the council is saying. I think that the time has come for us to say, if municipalities cannot provide basic services, then people must lose their jobs. And the one thing that we forget is MMCs can be removed from their positions by the mayor. And the buck has to stop with someone. For as long as we go around and say it's the whole municipality, even when you fine people for pollution, Cathy, you fine the municipality, the money comes from taxpayers' money. So the people who caused the mess are still in that job, and they still remain in that job. No one pays the price of actually messing up in the work that they do. And that's what we need to do as communities, is to actually make sure that people who are not doing their job, they must lose their jobs. We have to get working municipalities.
I'm just thinking about everything that you have said, Ferial, and given the nature of problems that we have around water, are we even at a point where we are able to have a deeper conversation around the sustainability of water provision in an area like South Africa, like SADC, which we're continuously reminded is quite dry, and that our water usage should be different anyway, given our location, that how we use water is simply not sustainable. I mean, are we even able to have that conversation meaningfully when people still have not had the experience of water supply that they can depend on and rely on, at least in some parts of the country?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and I think that it is difficult, but it is necessary. I think where we are right now demands that we have those conversations, even if there are large amounts of people and communities that do not have that luxury of having piped water regularly. But we still have to have those discussions, Cathy, because if we don't, my worry is that municipalities are not taking this seriously, and there's going to be continued wastage. There's going to be continued, ignoring those that need water, and continued siphoning off of water into the water tanker mafia or mismanagement of funds. For example, if you talk about the fact that this is national, in Mohale City, right, Mohale, the council, and that's all the political parties in that council, voted for spending 150 million rand on a new 6-story building, a new one, not fixing the one they have, a new one, rather than spending 80 million to fix the wastewater treatment works. That kind of thing can't happen anymore. And that is why, if we don't start talking about the urgency of the water, the scarcity of our water in the region, and how we have to start actually focusing on it, then municipalities are getting away with doing this nonsense.
Okay. Katu, you're calling us from Limpopo. Good morning.
Yes, how are you?
Well, thanks, Katu. Go for it.
I think one of the missing point or the missing link here is the return on investment. Like the previous speaker said, people invest 150 for a 6-story house than only 18 million for a treatment plant. We are exposed to that every day. We work with it. We work with them. We work on it. We are desperate. We do need help, especially professional people that they are in the water sector. The water sector has been politicized to such extent that your professionalism or your profession or your academia on the water level understanding is no longer valued. It's all about numbers. How many votes will I get? How many will I return if I do that? So the return on investment is the missing link. Whether between a professional and a politician, which one is a breadwinner? In this case, a politician is a breadwinner, but at the same time, the cost implication, it goes back to the professional and goes back to the public. So the return on investment, how we do things, how we do our work, day-to-day things, we have a problem whereby if you are not confronting the situation, all the country. I mean, when area like Mohale City complains about water, whereby it's a mining site. What about the rural area whereby they don't even have a borehole, a mere borehole? If they have an investment site whereby other community can pay, then from there, what about the region like Falvater in Limpopo? What about the area like Alma in Limpopo? What about the area like Rutan in Limpopo, whereby they're relying on the boreholes? If those boreholes run dry, what will happen to them? I mean, we can talk much, but honestly speaking, professional people, they must just, yes.
I want you to explain for me and explain it as you would to somebody who is not in the industry. When you talk about the politicization of water and that the voice of professionals is not respected, flesh it out for me. Help me understand what is happening in the sector. I hear the example that Ferial has made about where budgets, decisions about budgets and where they go.
Cathy, let me just the budget part I have already touched. Let me just go to Mamelodi. There was a Mamelodi mafia whereby they can block the pipes, and from there they sell water via the tanks. And the most benefactors are the politicians, the ones that they have people that will say no, we'll hire these tankers to work at the municipality so that they can withdraw much money, because in that case it will be more of addressing a crisis than addressing the problem. I'm just giving a tip of an iceberg. There is so much. People that can call, if professionals are listening, I know most of them they are listeners to these programs, and I know they are afraid to talk about it because even if we talk about it, we are being victimized and stuff like that. So, for example, the lady spoke about Mohale City being 93% when coming to Blue Drop. Yes, we acknowledge. It's all about documentation. But if you go to documentation, the document, the Blue Drop itself or the water base itself says each and every public has a right to peruse the books of municipality, especially on the water, so that you can see how much does it cost to treat 1 liter of a water. But those, you'll never get them.
Katu, thank you so much for that call. Incredibly insightful out in Limpopo, and you can hear Katu, somebody who is in the industry too. Anonymous, I understand you own a water management company and you want to weigh in on this conversation. Good morning.
Good morning, Sister Cathy. How are you?
Good. Go for it, Anonymous.
Thanks, Sister Cathy. You see, when we talk about this issue of water, Sister Cathy, it's very close to my heart, and I'll tell you why, Sister Cathy. We've been in the water industry for for over 20 years now. And what we see from our government of Cathy is disheartening. When you look at the people that are suffering versus the minority that get to benefit when there's tenders and everything out there. Cathy, let me just put it out there. Have you ever wondered why you go to a certain municipality, you see there's water meter readers there, there's technicians, there's a whole lot of people. These people are getting full salaries, benefits and everything. And then you get a tender advertised where we're supposed to install water meters. It's a very simple process. You procure a meter, you replace the old meter with a new meter. They call them smart water meters, but the process is the same. You take out the old one, you put in the new one. I still struggle to understand this process until today. With all the technicians they have, why do you want to put a 25 million rand tender for someone to come and install water meters? You have staff, fully equipped staff. These people, when there's crises, when there's leakages, these are the people who are running on the ground, fixing these leaks, replacing meters. But to get a tender, a 25 million rand tender, you get told we need X amount of meters. Come install these smart water meters for us. I mean, one of your guests there made a very, very important example with a building where you're saying you want a new building, 150 million rand building, versus spending 80 million rand fixing infrastructure, right? You are advertising a tender for water tankers, right? 200 water tankers. These water tankers, they cost X amount of money. Why are you not taking that money, fix infrastructure, have constant water supply for your residents? Cathy,
yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be part of a project in one of the provinces, right? So we were installing some of these meters. What was very, very sad in that poor community of Cathy was those who are fortunate enough to can install a borehole. You go, you install a borehole, but they are selling water to the less fortunate. So, Cathy, you have your own borehole, you spend X amount of money, super. But over and above that, you see that as an opportunity to make extra money.
Okay.
To a point where you sell water to residents.
Look, Anonymous, I hear you, and it's clearly an issue that you are deeply frustrated by. And again, your example builds on what Katu has said, where avenues of making money have been created in what should be systemic processes and costs that already exist within municipalities. Nelson, you are in Durban. You are a former employee of a municipality. Is what Anonymous is saying correct, that often municipalities are overspending for services that should be provided?
Morning to you, Cathy. And I want to say, performing a good show. I've been listening to you timelessly and very well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Nelson.
But every day, every month, for the past 30 years, we're hearing the same story about service delivery. It's unfortunately saddening. And there's no solution. There's so much of resolution, but no solution. The guy, I think he got Mrs. Adams speaking there from Watercan.
Yes.
I was trying to get hold of her. And he had an anonymous caller stating about what's happening in the water.
Mm.
Okay, let me give you an experience. I've been in the water section in a municipality for the past 20 years. Or rather, I've done my 40-year service in water. Recently, in my area where I live, they're using a thing called a tracing machine, like a doctor's stethoscope. Now, we used that 30 years ago. And now in modern technology, I was shocked to see they're still using that thing when I was working there. And we ran the water department. We monitored about 51 reservoirs in the old days, in apartheid time. And 98, we all had to leave, unfortunately. But we ran it precisely, efficiently, and diligently. And we enjoyed working and running the system. But what we see now, I know what the problem is. Hello, Cathy?
I'm listening to you, Nelson. What is the problem?
Sorry?
Very briefly, what is the problem as you see it?
I know what the problem is. I need to have a meeting on the air with the mayor of Durban, yourself, if it's possible, and I know where the system is falling. So no one wants to listen. 2019, I wrote to council. I got a letter there. No one replied to me.
Okay, so you don't want to tell us now. You want to tell us in a different conversation.
Yes. Ethnic was the water engineer, now the chief engineer. He knows me. He took over from Neil MacLeod.
Okay.
And
Nelson,
we're prepared to
Nelson, let me do this. Let me send you then through to Lebo, our producer, because you've made the point and you've given us as much as you're willing to for today. Mkonto, you're in the Eastern Cape. Good morning, Mkonto.
Yes, morning, Cathy. I'd like to ask a basic question because clearly the buck doesn't stop with the municipality. Can communities not litigate against the municipality when they do not provide services? Okay. And I'll tell you why I'm asking this. Because we have communities here who used to have water before, but because the water purification plants were not maintained by the municipality, it collapsed. And some of those communities have not had clean drinking water for the last 5 years, despite them being next to a river. Mm. So here you don't have a water scarcity issue. You've got an oversupply of water, but you've got basic maintenance of the infrastructure that is not being done. So hence my question, in such situations, surely communities should be able to take municipalities to court and litigate against them. Can I have that responded to, please?
Okay, all right. Thanks for the question, Mkonto. Henk, I'm going to come to you first and give you an opportunity to respond.
Well, just to respond to the last question of the community litigating against municipalities, absolutely, it's within their rights to do that. But you know, they can obviously also approach Chapter 9 institutions. They can approach civil society organizations. I know that many civil society organizations are currently litigating against government, local government in particular. So that is allowed and is happening on a continuous basis. Just to respond to one of the other inputs, you know, the reality in local government, and I also mentioned it earlier, is the lack of skilled employees, especially in our engineering departments at local level. And that is something that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. You know, you have council members, as I said, who are frustrating the appointment of Section 57 employees in municipalities, where municipalities have gone without senior management for years, literally for years without senior management. And we need skilled employees. I'm grateful. I've read in the media that in eThekwini, just to come in here, Nelson, eThekwini skilled engineers have now been appointed to assist with the water challenges in eThekwini.
Okay.
But we also need responsible political leadership in local government. We need the political will in local government to ensure that that services are provided, that people get what they're supposed to get in terms of the Constitution.
Okay.
And yes.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We are completely out of time for this conversation. Hank Boshoff, Commissioner at the Human Rights Commission, Dr. Ferial Adam, Executive Manager at WaterCan, and Willie Lefitla, a PR Councillor for the DA in Kutzong. So, unfortunately, that's where we'll leave it. But I think the input from our listeners has also given us a lot to think about in terms of building on this conversation and fully understanding where the problems are systemically with the provision of water.
South African Airways is expanding in the DRC. We now offer direct flights from Johannesburg to Lubumbashi, the heart of the DRC's mining hub. Our convenient arrival time allows seamless connections to key regions like Ndola and the Copper Belt, opening up new growth opportunities. Traders can benefit from our generous baggage allowance, while SAA's superior aircraft belly capacity ensures your cargo reaches most parts of Congo on the same day. Book now at flysaa.com or contact your travel agent. South African Airways, connecting Africa to the world, one flight at a time.
Top stories at 11 o'clock. A welcome decrease in the CPI numbers and arrests over a multi-billion rand diamond investment scam. A very good morning to you. It's good news for consumers as prices continue to ease. Data released by Stats SA shows that the annual consumer price inflation dropped from 4.4% in August to 3.8% in September. The main positive contributors to inflation were housing and utilities, miscellaneous goods and services, food and non-alcoholic beverages, as well as alcoholic beverages and tobacco. Nelson Mandela Bay residents in the Eastern Cape say the non-maintenance of stormwater drains is the reason for flooding in some areas. Missionvale residents in Gqeberha say they had to unblock the stormwater drain themselves yesterday. The Jack Street area that was flooded with water yesterday has since cleared. One resident whose house was flooded and furniture damaged, Juanita Solza, says the municipality did not do anything as they only arrived later after the residents had drained the water.
People who were staying around us, the residents, they was the one who go there to that site and dig there, and so that is why the water go through that cave there, and that's why it get drier in front of us. Was it not for the resident, and then I don't know what's going to happen with us.
In KZN, meanwhile, following days of heavy rain over large parts of that province, residents can now look forward to the weather clearing up from today. The Weather Service says that the rest of the week is expected to be warmer, with a slight chance of afternoon thunder showers from Friday. A Limpopo nurse has been shot dead near the Leboa Khomo Hospital entrance. The health department says the nurse was shot after disembarking from a minibus taxi while going to work late yesterday. Her identity has not been divulged. MEC Dieketseng Mashego has expressed sadness over the incident. She has sent messages of condolences to the victim's family and to the department's workers. 8 suspects have been arrested in connection with an alleged multi-billion rand diamond scam. Diamond investors were scammed of more than 4 billion rand since 2019. The Hawks are hoping to make more arrests soon. Horisanis Tole reports.
An operation by the Northern Cape Hawks led to the arrest of 8 suspects who are alleged to have been involved in the diamond investment scam. The operation, which was conducted last night, rounded up suspects in Gauteng and Northwest. The suspects includes a couple where the husband is alleged to have been the mastermind behind the scam, along with his wife. The suspects are expected to appear in the Bronkhorstspruit Magistrates Court on Thursday. They face charges of fraud, money laundering, theft and racketeering.
And President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa sees Russia as a valued ally who supported the country's struggle against apartheid. He met with his Russian counterpart, President Vladimir Putin, in Kazan on the margins of the BRICS summit. Putin stressed that the two countries' trade and economic ties remain generally positive. A number of world leaders are attending the summit to tackle pressing global issues. Kaelihle Khumalo has more.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has made it patently clear that this is a critical moment for BRICS leaders. Speaking during a bilateral meeting with President Putin, President Ramaphosa says Pretoria and Moscow must boost trade, fight climate change, prioritize peace and security. President Putin says the two nations should work jointly to expand and diversify mutual trade and investment. Promising spheres of cooperation include energy, industry, agriculture, science and innovation. Kaelihle Khumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Taking another look at your top story at 11 o'clock, it's good news for consumers as prices continue to ease. Stats SA says the annual consumer price inflation dropped from 4.4% in August to 3.8% in September. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
The citizens of Manchester are highly motivated to cruise with a convincing victory against Southampton.
It's brilliant from Grealish, and Guardiola's up there as well, and City lead.
Meanwhile, the Saints are pumped up to fight for the entire match duration away from home.
And flicked on, and again the Saints have the effort, and this time he does score. And we're back in the game.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting contest between reigning champions Manchester City FC and Southampton FC on Saturday 26 October at 3:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
Good morning, Cathy. Cathy, you know, it's Matime from Kagiso here. Here in Kagiso, Cathy, you know what? We have a problem with the sauce. Now Kagiso is so stinky. It's so smelling, sour, and the sour is running 24/7. We've got a place there at the riverside. There's a river there. Now all the sour going that side. They're flowing all over Kagiso. It's so rich. Yeah, you know what? We have a problem here with the Mogale city. I think it was documented recently, Carte Blanche everywhere, but the sewer is flowing 24/7. But the municipality, that's all quiet. They don't even come to us and explain when are they going. Because this thing I think is got the air flowing. Raw sewer flowing in the river here in Kagiso. It's in most of the streets here. There's a sewer going 24/7, Kathy. Literally, so We are in big trouble. Our government, our municipality, in Front West, bad. Thank you, Kathy.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Yeah, look, this is an incredible issue, and clearly so many different communities are affected by it. That is the lack of access to clean water, the breakdown of water treatment plants. But I'm very keen to hear more about what was shared by some of our listeners, those who are in the industry, who are very clearly able to pinpoint where exactly the politicians are making the money out of the breakdown. So the water tankers has been one we've been, noting for some time, but certainly having those conversations, it sheds a lot more light and helps us to understand how we are being fleeced of monies in municipalities. And these are decisions that we are also approving, or are said to be approving, because we don't get involved, at least not to the extent that we do. And our absence rubber stamps the behavior of these politicians. Well, coming up over this hour, we're going to be focusing on the 16th BRICS Summit taking place in Kazan in Russia currently. It's expected to host 36 leaders from different parts of the world. They include the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The summit will also see the first appearance of the newest members of BRICS, that is Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. Professor David Mohlahlana is a director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Mohlahlana, good morning to you.
Good morning to you and to all listeners.
So, should we say BRICS, or should we be finding alternative acronyms to include the new members? And why is it that a year on, it is still the BRICS Summit?
Yeah, I think the new members, now it's BRICS Plus, and that means the agreement and the nature of these agreements is that they will maintain the name for a while. I think with time, as more and more countries join, there might be considering a new name. I think there are so many names. But I think the bottom line, this is a group of global south countries that are trying to balance global economy, bringing in fairness in the system that they see to be unfair with the post-1945 world order led by the U.S. and Western world.
Does it also seek to reinforce the position of these founding member countries within this organization as it plans on growing even further than what it has?
Yeah, when you look at all these countries, even though they do not have same political orientation, but they are united on core issues. They need a fast transformation and reform of the United Nations system and all its agencies, such as the IMF, the World Bank. Fairness in terms of trade and the global public goods, such as SWIFT. I think that the agenda at this time in Russia it's all about trying to find an alternative SWIFT, given the fact that due to the war in Ukraine, United States and Western world have weaponized SWIFT, and therefore I think there's this fear in the global south that they cannot stand by while public goods are being weaponized.
Prof, if we go back perhaps even to the formative years of BRICS, the quest to provide an alternative, to be an established voice for not only the collective of countries in the South, but also to make sure that whatever issues these countries are facing are given global prominence, that they're coming together to have a seat at the table, and through that coming together, they're hoping is what will give sway, at least in terms of countering what is happening in the West. Do you think that they've been able to do that in earnest? Because again, yes, we now are seeing all of these geopolitical tensions that are unraveling in different parts of the world. But I don't get a sense that the BRICS countries have a stronger voice than they did when they held the 10th session of BRICS, or even when they held the 5th session of the BRICS summit.
Well, I think the starting point is that BRICS Plus is not anti-West. It is an alternative in the sense that since its formation, BRICS argues for fairness and if you look at the G7, it's also another formation of the most developed countries, and they have this hegemony over almost all institutions of global governance. I think the tension lies right there. So you have countries like South Africa that have so much in common with the West, and at the same time, some aspects in common with the East on issues of development. It does not take sides. However, in its own struggle and post-1994, it has been arguing that the world needs to change. We cannot remain with your post-1945 world order where power resides in only few countries, what we call the global minority. Just to give an example, IMF and World Bank, since their formation, they are run by Europeans and Americans. No any other nation will head these institutions, and that is it's unfair. With 45, with 54, 55 countries on the African continent, bulk countries in Latin America and Asia, they do not have the power and representation in key institutions of UN, particularly the United Nations Security Council. Even the debate of reform, United States comes out and says it wants Africa to join United Nations Security Council, but without a veto. That, I think, sits at the heart of most global South countries wanting an alternative way of balancing power in the world.
Let me bring into the conversation Thembisa Fakude, who is a senior research fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogues. Thembisa, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So the question I was asking Prof. Munyai is, has the BRICS been able to build up a strong voice as it aspired to, during its foundation to where we are today? Yes, there are now plans of expanding even beyond just the countries that are part of BRICS Plus now. But do they have a sway? Are they influencing the geopolitics in the way that they envisioned?
Unfortunately, not yet. I know that they're trying to do so, but the only time we get to hear about BRICS is whenever there's a summit, like it's happening right now in Kazan, where I am. But outside that, we don't hear much about BRICS. It's continues to struggle, for example, to get the new development bank, also known as the BRICS Bank, to gain prominence and begin doing what it was established and intended to do. So the only news that's making at the moment is expansion, and I think that has invited excitement from various quarters. The fact that you have all of these big names at the moment gathering, but again, you have those that have promised to join in, countries such as Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, not attending but sending foreign ministers to this year's BRICS. That in itself, again, has been to an extent a negative for this year's gathering. You also have countries such as Argentina that have rejected joining BRICS, besides Saudi Arabia that's been flip-flopping. We don't know whether it's joining in or not joining in. So to answer your question direct, I don't think they are really making headlines, for a lack of a better term. One hopes, of course, that as we move along, that's going to happen. But for now, nothing is happening.
David, if we are to look at Russia, where the summit is being held currently, what is the significance of the summit for Russia within this current moment? Because one also gets a sense that President Vladimir Putin would want to capitalize on this moment, given the fact that there is still that ongoing conflict with Ukraine.
I think the greatest winner at the moment is Russia. That despite all efforts taken by the Western world to isolate Russia, we have a significant number of quite important leaders who are in Kazan as we speak, including the Secretary General of United Nations. So that in itself is a victory for President Putin, that Russia is not as isolated as everyone thought it would be the case. And President Putin has, as the host, has the ears of the global south, and he was able to advance his views. Also on quite a number of issues, the weaponization of SWIFT against Russia. I think this is a golden opportunity for President Putin to say to the global south there is a need, an agent to move swiftly to establish these new global public goods to enable and facilitate trade should the West continue on weaponizing not only the SWIFT, the dollar itself. I think there's a growing number of countries that are starting to trade in their local currency. So we do not think that one would just wake up one morning, the West is no longer leading. The West, and the United States in particular, remains the most powerful country, no doubt about it. The dollar is still strong. But the pillars that hold that power of the U.S. and Western world is being chipped on a daily basis. I think that's the point that one is making all around in terms of moral high ground. With the war in Middle East, United States cannot say it is promoting democracy or it's pro-human rights while it's sending weapons, committing genocide in one place. So the dollar itself and quite a number of other pillars are being chipped on a daily basis. I think that's what benefits for President Putin and for the global south.
Tembisa, do you believe that this organization or this formation has been able to build legitimacy, especially when it comes to challenging the world order? And I know that Prof. Munyai says that BRICS is not an anti-West organization, but it did very much plan on being on disrupting the status quo. So whether one sees that as being anti-West or not, that can be a debate. But the point is that it wanted to have an alternative even to how hegemony and power, global power, is distributed. Can we say that they are at a point where that has gained legitimacy and is happening?
I think the current status quo, the fact that we've got countries such as the United States that are actively lobbying to prevent some countries from joining in. We know, for example, that Saudi Arabia is lobbied at the moment strongly by the United States not to join BRICS, notwithstanding, of course, that they've already made that commitment. The new development bank is certainly an alternative that will counter and present a new competition to the current lending institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF. So that in its own is also very important. But the fact that BRICS has been consistent in terms of having their meetings and chatting forward the agenda on how they see the world, particularly in terms of economics, that in itself is very important. There's been a very serious consistency. You have more and more countries, over 20 countries, I'm told, are applying to join BRICS so that they can be added as a plus in BRICS. That in itself, again, indicates that there is a serious challenge that BRICS is facing, or a threat that BRICS is posing to the current status quo. President of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, sees this as an opportunity as well, because it seeks to cushion national currencies that are susceptible to sanctions by bigger powers. So if the so-called new BRICS currency comes into play, that could be an unsanctionable currency that will assist weaker and vulnerable currencies such as the Turkish lira, that is often ambushed by those that don't like the politics of Tayyip Erdogan or other countries in the world. So it is an important platform, and I think if it continues the way it is continuing at the moment in terms of trying to achieve what it plans to achieve, it's certainly going to present a new healthy competition to other lending institutions in the world and the politics of the global north that has all the years imposed itself on developing nations.
I want you both to please reflect on the dynamic that is faced by those countries that are within BRICS as they pursue this agenda of being an alternative, and then also having to deal with their individual relationships, in particular with countries like the US. So if you think about South Africa's own position, including on the conflict, the war that is taking place in Ukraine, that of course had an incredible fallout for the South African government with the United States that enjoys a very close relationship with the country. It's clearly a relationship it values and also wants to protect. What does the future of that look like, especially if we're to look at just some of the events that happened last year? Prof. Munyai?
Well, indeed. I think South Africa's position is quite clear, that it is not in favor of the war in Ukraine, nor is it in favor of the war in the Middle East. I think on the Middle East side, it has taken Israel to ICJ, and its position, therefore, it will always be in clash with the United States and some Western countries because of its position that it wants change to take place at United Nations level, that we need to transform these bodies and bring legitimacy to the UN system itself. And at a time where United States and most Western countries don't want to give up power or share power. However, South Africa shares so much in common with most Western world, liberal democracy, the constitution itself. But on the other side, when it comes to development, it also has more in common, or it aspires to a developmental model that is people-centered. The need to bring people out of poverty in South Africa and across the African continent. It's quite key, and therefore I think South Africa is playing better politics at a world stage, but there's always a price to pay, not just from the United States, but from the other side as well.
But is this a pattern that we're likely to see continue, Prof? I mean, is this what we should anticipate going forward, or will things change once these countries within the BRICS Plus formation are able to strengthen their voice and have a sway in terms of decisions that are made?
Well, indeed, I think for me, it's just a question of we are moving in a multipolar world, and we're going to increasingly have issue-based, and therefore, wherever South Africa's foreign policy converge with the United States, South Africa should move with the United States, and it is doing so, whether it's AGOA or so many other cultural links and so many other aspects of foreign policy. And similarly with China, Russia, and other countries in the global south, including Brazil, South Africa needs to expand and trade with these countries so that it does not rely solely on Western world or on the other countries. So it has to be a balance and move and advance its interest, which is pro-human rights, and human rights not just in the political sense of the ballot box that we hear from the Western world, but comprehensive human rights that includes the belly. How you need food to eat, you need rights, you need a road to go to schools and bridges. So I think we need to be comprehensive in our understanding what constitutes human rights.
Okay, we're going to continue with the conversation in a moment. Tembisa, I'm going to give you an opportunity to reflect on the very same issues that are brought up with Professor David Mohlahlana. We're talking about the BRICS summit that is taking place in Russia this week, and looking then at the role of this organization, and has it met, its objective? Is it becoming a solid voice that is trusted, that sways power, at least when it comes to the global order of things? We'll take your calls, 086 000 2032. If you want to contribute to this conversation, get in touch with us on the studio line, 086 000 2032, on the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. It's 11:30.
Very good morning. With the news headlines this hour, Cathy Mohlahlana. 2 suspects have been arrested in connection with the murder of 5 family members at BG outside Mthatha in the Eastern Cape. Economists say as consumer price inflation reaches its lowest levels in 3 years, more interest rate cuts are on the cards. And residents of Nelson Mandela Bay in the Eastern Cape says the non-maintenance of stormwater drains is the reason for flooding in some of the areas there. And those are your headlines. A full news update at the top of the hour.
Get ready, Mzansi! The jaw-dropping 82 million rand estimated lotto jackpot is your chance to take home big millions this Saturday. Don't delay! Play Lotto for an estimated 82 million rand jackpot today for your chance at an unforgettable win. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play! Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. eTuba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
The Days on Banyana are meeting for the very first time. The 12th world-ranked women's national team want to triumph on home soil. However, African champions have a different notion in mind. They want to be the victors on foreign ground. Europe clashes with Africa. This is the international friendly, red and white versus green and gold. Catch the breathtaking clash between Denmark and South Africa on Friday, 25 October at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're reflecting on the BRICS summit, part of the agenda for the 16th summit being held in Russia this year. Includes, as you've already heard, the reduction of transactions from the US dollar to local currencies. This is in a bid by the countries to try and bolster their own local economies. Of course, the geopolitical environment will feature quite significantly, in particular the role of multilateralism in overcoming conflict. So we've seen organizations like the United Nations, like the ICJ, make all of these rulings in terms of some of the global conflicts currently going on. But what has been the result of that? None of them have necessarily been implemented. So where is the power? And what is the power then of these multilateral organizations? Professor David Munyai is a director of the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg, and Tembisa Fakude, Senior Research Fellow at Africa-Asia Dialogue. So Tembisa, let me give you a chance then to reflect on the consequences that we have seen for countries as they take the stance that aligns with sort of their regional affiliations in organizations such as BRICS, and then the personal repercussions for these countries and the management of those relationships.
Yeah, I think BRICS, to an extent, cushions and protect countries from direct attack from the current dominant powers, particularly Western countries, European countries, and United States. The United States will not allow any of its former allies or any of the developing nations to establish strong relations, at least with four main countries, one being Iran, Russia, and China and Saudi Arabia. If you touch those four countries, you are likely to have attention of the United States, and they are likely to go after you. If they have powers to suppress, they will suppress. If they have powers to persuade you from joining in and strengthening bilaterals with these countries, they do so, particularly if those relationships would involve politics and security matters. So that's what we've seen happening. But what I think BRICS does, BRICS helps those smaller countries that wants to be associated and aligned with these big countries. It cautions them and protects them from direct conflict with these big powers. And I think you're going to continue having all of these countries wanting to establish relationships with BRICS. But having said that, the smaller countries will continue to rely on the existence of multilateral platforms. Without multilateral platforms, all of these countries are vulnerable. They're only protected at the moment, even though, of course, it lacks teeth to implement, is the United Nations General Assembly and United Nations Security Council. But in the absence of them, especially in countries such as Israel, where they've failed to stop this brutality that's continually directed at the Palestinians, many people are now starting to talk about an alternative body or alternative multilateral platforms that will have enough teeth to bite whenever necessary, because we see all of us real time what's happening in Gaza, West Bank, and Lebanon, and these multilateral bodies that we've relied on for so many years have failed to act. But I doubt if BRICS, even if it was given, those powers will be able to stop these brutes that are emerging around the world. And, God forbid, we don't have something similar in November in the United States, because the world, I think, will go into flames when someone comes into power in the United States. So BRICS is the only hope at the moment, and many people would like to see BRICS gaining those powers that will help prevent wars, conflict around the world, and try and institute some sort of political global stability.
So, Prof, when it comes to the aim of BRICS, it wasn't just supposed to be an organization that is involved with giving a political voice or political platform for countries. It was also supposed to be centered on the economies and increasing trade amongst these countries as the opportunity too. Have we seen that happen? And perhaps if we can speak more directly from the perspective of a country like South Africa, has BRICS yielded the kind of economic fortunes or unlocked the kind of economic opportunities that we would want to see?
I think the issue here is that, firstly, BRICS does not have a structure, it does not have a secretariat. Whatever agreements they have are not binding. This is a loose formation, very loose. They agree on core issues. So I think South Africa's interest in terms of advancing its economy, it's indeed benefiting a great deal in terms of expanding its trade far beyond your traditional partners, to China, to countries that previously South Africa was not trading with, in Latin America. So I think in being a member of BRICS, it gives it that advantage and flexibility. Obviously, issues of economy, you cannot separate them from politics. These are two sides of the same coin. That you end up being stuck in these kind of issues. New members that are coming in, such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, and in Latin America, and including Russia itself, where at times questions are asked, but the main core issue is that South Africa is not altering its politics following anyone. South Africa is a democracy, and it strongly see benefit of working with everyone, including BRICS countries, at the time when its interests, as well as the Western world, is strengthening with the United States. But tensions will always be there. And I think the best thing for the government is to explain clearly for the population to understand why South Africa takes certain position on world stage, and the reason why, without really over-dependent and over-explaining itself, especially to the United States. It has to own up and explain more to its citizens than going to Washington to forever explaining why we're close to break.
Okay. I'm going to bring in some of the views of our listeners. And in fact, one of them touches on the issue of an own currency. One could very well argue that the 15th edition of the BRICS Summit ended with this debate around the formation of a new currency. I wonder where we are with that today. I'll give you an opportunity to respond after these voice notes.
Hi, Cathy. Good morning again, Mafuta. Hey, Cathy, can you ask your guest to reflect on my view that I think the BRICS countries should speedily develop their own currency? Because if they don't do that, it will mean that the US dollar will be still the means of trade and influential in the global trade. Can you ask your guest to reflect on that? Because I heard that there's a view to say countries should use their national currencies in terms of trade. How would that promote a shift in the global trade or the trade among the BRICS countries? Cathy?
Morning, Katie. They must also form their own ICJ, own ICC, so that other countries, like African countries, are not undermined by USA and European countries. Thank you, Katie.
All right. Thanks for those views there. Tembisa?
Well, I think there's no doubt that eventually something called BRICS currency is going to exist. The efforts of encouraging currencies of respective members to be used as instrument of trade within BRICS environment, that is likely to happen sooner than the BRICS currency. But having said that, that's not going to happen without competition or pushback from the Western countries, particularly the United States, because this is likely to interrupt the dominance of the US dollar and the euro, but importantly, it's also likely to present, if it's going to be operated and executed by the new development bank, is going to interrupt and push back the advances and the business of both the IMF and the World Bank. So there's certainly going to be a pushback because these countries are not just going to sit and allow this to happen. But I'm convinced that these two It's just a matter of time before they're put into effect. That is one. The introduction of the new manner of trade within the BRICS countries. In other words, using local currencies to trade within the BRICS environment. But two, the establishment of a BRICS bank. And I think that's what has attracted the likes, as I've said earlier on, of Turkey, which has been a victim of henchmen and hitmen from around the world. Whenever their currency starts to pick up, you'll have certain countries going against the Turkish lira, and Turkish lira loses its value overnight. So the only way you can prevent that from happening is by joining in and starting to use a currency that's not going to be able to be sanctioned easily or attacked easily, as it's been the case, particularly with the Turkey lira. So it's a matter of time. I think it's going to happen. But importantly, and this is a very important fact to note, is that there's certainly going to be a pushback, particularly from the United States. They're not going to sit and watch this happening because it threatens the current world order. And if that, by the way, is allowed to happen or is successful, you are likely to have developing nations starting to chart their own social, political, and economic agenda outside the dominance of the West, as it's the case at the moment.
Okay. Eunice, you're in Johannesburg. Good morning. Very briefly for me, please, Eunice.
Yeah, hi there, Cathy. I'd like your guest to just answer one question. As part of the BRICS community at the moment, you know, you've got the West sanctions on Russia because of the war with Ukraine on fuel. But yet fellow BRICS countries, China and India, are getting cut-price fuel from Russia. So why is it that we can't buy that fuel? Are we now, like your guest said, subservient now to the U.S.? And, for example, if Iran comes into BRICS, the same thing will happen. Because if the West has got sanctions on Iran and we don't have a problem with Iran, why can't we buy fuel at cut prices, and then the benefit will come to the public and probably at half the price at the pumps here for us?
Okay, thanks for that, Janus.
Thanks.
Prof, I'll let you take that alongside your concluding remarks, please.
Indeed, I mean, it's an animal farm kind of scenario. We are all not equal at the world stage. I think United States is at ease with India buying oil from Russia and sell it to Europeans. Why that the U.S. does that? I think because it really wants the tension between India and China. On one hand, it benefits the United States with those tensions. For South Africa, it's smaller power. Therefore, I think, for me, it's not a question of us buying from Russia and Saudi Arabia. We should be buying from our neighbors, Angola. We should be buying from Nigeria. And I think we have so much oil on the African continent. I think we need to spend more time and to trade among ourselves. When it comes to the BRICS currents, I do not see it coming anytime soon. I'm one of those people who think it's a really complex way to establish one. Your reserve banks have to work together, inflation and all. I mean, it will be chaos, I mean, in my view. I do not think in the next 5-10 years we're going to have a BRICS current. However, the local currents, trade in local currency in itself, it's one of the greatest way and vehicle of de-dollarization. It's already taking place at an accelerated rate. Many countries are buying goods, trade among themselves using their local currency, bypassing the dollars, as well as the issue of the SWIFT. If I think Kazan BRICS 2024, if that is established, it will be the greatest achievement of BRICS and Russia's leadership of BRICS, as was the case with South Africa 2023. I think the expansion was the greatest victory for South Africa in chairing BRICS last year. So it's wait and see. It's a long way to go, and the world is fluid as we speak. Okay. Those with power, they are no longer having that power, are losing it, and those who want new power, they are not there. So we are in between the transition.
All right. Professor David Monyayi, Tembisa Fakude, let me thank you both for your contributions to this conversation. It also brings us to the end of the talking point for today. Up next is the book reading. The show back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday.
Namibia and Seychelles both want their presence felt when they meet at 12 midday, while Mzansi's Banyana Banyana confront neighbors Eswatini at 3 p.m. This is the doubleheader of the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Women's Championship. Catch both matches on Friday, 25 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Get ready, Mzansi! The jaw-dropping 82 million rand estimated lotto jackpot is your chance to take home big millions this Saturday. Don't delay. Play Lotto for an estimated 82 million rand jackpot today for your chance at an unforgettable win. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. eTuba is a proud operator of the National Lottery.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of A Life of Purpose, written by Luvuyo Wochela and Lumkile Wiseman Kuhlu. The reader is Lerato Velase.
At the conclusion of the meeting, the MAP Steering Committee was instructed to accelerate the preparation of detailed priority programs and to extend participation in the preparatory process to stakeholders across the continent. In addition, the founding presidents resolved to invite President Hosni Mubarak of Egypt and President Abdoulaye Wade of Senegal to join them as co-founders and champions of the program, and to appoint their own representatives to the MAP Steering Committee. The merger of the three continental initiatives into one became the most urgent task. Indeed, it posed a critical challenge, especially for Wiseman, who had already served as the convener and chairman of the steering committee for the first plan. The merger of the three required astute planning, communication, and negotiating skills, as well as experience of how to navigate around the multiplicity of government and multilateral institutions. Wiseman relied on his instincts and the lessons learned from previous experiences, and he focused on winning the trust and confidence of participants by being a good listener and going out of his way to show his understanding of their views. Engaging the Compact for Africa Recovery had started as early as December 2000. Wiseman invited KY Amuwako to Pretoria in January 2001 and secured a meeting for him with President Mbeki, followed by consultations in Pretoria and in Addis Ababa. During these consultations, Amuwako became increasingly amenable to integrating his Compact for African Recovery Plan to the MAP and to work closely with the MAP Steering Committee